They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry!
So point guards are one of the most popular builds in the game, with a variety of viable classes and interesting playstyles. But the meta has shifted in recent patches, leading to some builds having a lot more success than others. So today we'll be reviewing the point guard position, as well as which stats and abilities are found in the S-tier players. But before we touch on specific players, let's go over the common abilities found in point guards, as well as a brief history on how we got to this point. Point guards are a classic build archetype dating back to the 19.46 patch, and traditionally focus their development points into mobility and passing in order to distribute the ball to their larger carries. But two major patch updates have forced point guards to invest more and more into scoring-based stats in the more recent patches. Point guards' smaller builds have always given them an advantage in open space, but the 19.79 patch unlocked the three-point ability, giving long-range carries a viable spot in the meta for the first time. Fast forward to today's meta, and long-range attacks have almost completely taken over the guard position, rising from roughly 33,000 attempts in the 20.1 patch to nearly 92,000 in the most recent 2024 patch. Point guard players should rejoice, as this long-range meta synergizes perfectly with their class abilities. The first of these abilities is Symbiosis, which allows them to ignore all accuracy debuffs when passing the ball to an ally. Now, passing obviously isn't exclusive to the point guard position, but Symbiosis allows them to fit the ball into even the tightest passing windows, which unlocks lanes that would otherwise be closed without an active point guard. However, being able to ignore accuracy debuffs shouldn't be confused with perfect passing, as even the best guards can make poor decisions and overly ambitious passes. Concoct is the other class ability exclusively available to guards, granting them access to the draw play skill without the input of a coach. High-level parties have become increasingly reliant on the ability to draw up plays, even in the most chaotic of environments, where access to a coach may be limited. So that covers the basics for guards. Let's move on to the tier list. At the bottom of the tier list, we have two builds that would traditionally be much higher up, but unfortunately, they lack the ability to access almost half their base stats due to injury, and that's Markelle Fultz and Ben Simmons. Fultz initially invested into a low-risk, high-tier meta build, speccing heavily into shooting with good agility and average intelligence. However, a permanent shoulder debuff leaves him unable to utilize any of his shooting stats, functionally bricking his entire build. Our other F tier is Ben Simmons, who initially invested into a build with insanely high physical stats, at the cost of a near zero shooting stat. Unfortunately for him, he began to accumulate debuffs to his back, and his physical stats plummeted, basically to zero. These days, he can still pop off the occasional assist to help out his carries, but when it comes to being a carry himself, the threat is completely gone. Moving on to D tier, we have two guards that can play limited minutes for your team, but for two completely different reasons. First up is Jose Alvarado. By all accounts, he could easily be in the C tier if you look at his base stats, which are pretty solid across the board. Astonishingly, he also has his own unique ability, Grand Theft, which allows him to exponentially increase his steal rate when in the crouched position. However, bonus stats from this ability quickly fall off with each use, and doesn't really make up for his lack of melee-style attacking on the offensive end. Next is Russell Westbrook. Looking at his stats, we can see he has few holes in his game, though his lack of shooting does limit the advantages given to him by his insane mobility. But what really limits him as a guard is actually one of his unique abilities, Moxie. You may remember Moxie from our discussion on Jared Allen. The ability gives a boost to your offensive and defensive stats with each consecutive dunk. Well, Westbrook's capacity to trigger Moxie was completely unprecedented, allowing him to keep nearly 100% uptime of the ability in his prime. Unfortunately, as his age decreased his mobility, he was unable to trigger his Moxie consistently. And these days, he tends to take difficult shots that would have landed with his Moxie buff stats. But without the Moxie bonus, they fall well short of dealing any damage. Working our way up to C tier, we have the duo of Fred VanVleet and Derek White, who both share the same base class abilities of Concoct and Symbiosis. However, this shouldn't cause you to overlook them when looking for party members, as both can be solid contributors to elite-level parties, and excel at performing long-ranged attacks. We start with Fred VanVleet, who boasts high offense and surprisingly high defensive stats for a guard his size. On offense, he utilizes creative attacks around the rim, slipping past defenders to inflict damage from unexpected angles. Keep in mind though, that his ability to generate offense isn't S tier. and he can occasionally take away opportunities from higher tier scorers on your team, even when it isn't beneficial to your party. Derek White is our first support-focused build, with average to above average stats across the board. And while he lacks the offensive playmaking abilities found in other guards, his ability to complement high-level offensive and defensive players is unmatched at the position. Need a carry to start heating up in crunch time? He's got your back. Need a steal on defense to start a new raid on the enemy team? No problem. Parties with 2 or more high-level carries should make it a priority to add Derek White, should he become available. Up next, we have the offensive-focused builds of Trae Young and Jamal Murray. I know. Trae Young's defensive stats are abysmal, but hear me out. Generating efficient damage to the enemy's basket is the premier skill in the NBA, and Trae Young's offensive stats are simply too high to put him in any lower tier. His three-point percentage, while hovering at a mediocre 34%, is driven lower due to the insanely high level of difficulty on most of his shots. And while it would be best if he avoided those shots altogether, his party's lack of other offensive playmaking options forces him to take them. He also boasts some of the highest passing stats in the game, but isn't quite at the S tier level like Luka Doncic, who will make an appearance later in the list. His defense, as we know, is abysmal. Simply put, he doesn't have the mobility or the size to effectively guard the majority of players in the league. So if you do happen to add Trae Young to your party, your priority should be to place a high-level defensive big behind him in order to clean up errant attacks to your basket. Moving on, we have Jamal Murray, who is a pick-and-roll based guard with decent base stats, though his high level of off-ball offense is what pushes him into the B-tier category. His style of build fits perfectly with his S-tier teammate, Nikola Jokic, and allows him to consistently inflict easy damage to the enemy basket. That isn't to say he lacks playmaking abilities though, as Jamal Murray may be one of the best off-carries in the entire league. His high level of shooting, agility, and playmaking is difficult for all but the best defenders to deal with. And his defensive and physical stats are well above the level of someone like Trae Young, which makes far fewer builds able to exploit his size on the other end of the floor. Now we're on to the A tier, where we start finding a consistent pattern of unique abilities in guards. First up is Ja Morant, who actually has an incredibly similar build to Russell Westbrook, but with additional points in shooting. His unique passives include Moxie and Intimidate. Intimidate is a straightforward ability, but don't underestimate it. It lowers opponents' defensive stats during isolation plays, creating strong opportunities for Morant to activate Moxie. Morant is a classic Berserker build, and relentlessly attacks the enemy basket for critical damage. No one is safe from Morant's aggression, and even the strongest defenders find themselves baffled by his ability to elevate and crush dunks into the basket. However, you should be aware that a Berserker build doesn't come without drawbacks, as this aggressive style of attacking often causes self-inflicted damage and heavily limits his durability. Next we have Tyrese Halliburton, who epitomizes the traditional point guard build, albeit with a modern twist of additional outside scoring. Halliburton's physical stats are fairly underwhelming compared to his A-tier counterparts, but you should never overlook the strength of a unique passive. Symbiosis is a strong passive by itself, but when coupled with Hustle, which drastically lowers in-game fatigue, he becomes a machine during raid-style attacks. Should you find Halliburton in your party, you should focus on having him push the pace of the game, racing out into raids where he can exhaust the enemy team, and then use Symbiosis to deliver perfect passes on a dime. And finally, we have Steph Curry. Now look, no one is arguing that Pete Curry isn't an S-tier player in every respect, even today. But the issue is that his durability stat has always been a bit low. That being said, he is still clearly A-tier because of his monumentally high shooting stats and insanely strong unique abilities, Kenai and Shooter's Mark. Kenai negates all accuracy reduction from other abilities and players, while Shooter's Mark increases his accuracy with each consecutively made basket. As you can imagine, Curry's gameplay revolves around finding any open window to shoot from, and quickly ramping up stacks of Shooter's Mark as the game goes on. If your party isn't successful in stopping his stacking, his accuracy will increase so much that normally inaccurate shots can go in at nearly a 100% rate. So it's critical that your party get a block, steal, or force him into a turnover, which will clear his Shooter's Mark stacks and reset his accuracy back down to mortal levels. Luka Doncic, an S-tier guard no matter how you look at him. He has everything you could want in a point guard, and more. As I've mentioned before, Being the offensive engine for your party is the most important skill in the league, and Luka has it in spades. He can pull off lightning-quick, insanely creative passes into open space for shooters, or craft passes on the pick and roll to allow his centers to easily attack the hoop. He can also cook opposing defenders in open space with a tight handle and super efficient movements. And if that doesn't work, he can make his way to the basket and finish over any size defender with his unique combination of size and control. Now, Luka isn't the perfect player, and his below-average mobility and durability raise a few questions. But his unique passives, Stall and Skill Link, are possibly the most broken in the game. Stall is a simple ability that allows Luka to perform any of his offensive moves after his opponents. And while this may not sound broken, it forces his opponents to commit to an action, allowing Luka to perform the perfect counter move every time. This even has a ranged component, allowing him to make perfect skip passes in the pick and roll at otherworldly rates. Skill Link is the perfect synergy for Stall, as it increases the effectiveness of multi-move possessions. Luka will set up his defenders with multiple crossovers, before making a final move with Skill Link's boosted power. This skill works against any defender in the league, and allows him to easily overcome even the strongest defenders. Obtaining Luka in your party ensures you have arguably the best offensive carry in the league, and you'd be insane to pass up the opportunity to obtain him, should he become available. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is the other guard in S tier, who contains two unique abilities himself. The first, Opportunist, allows him to draw fouls with even the slightest misplay from the opposing defender. And while not aesthetically pleasing, any chance to inflict free damage to the enemy basket is simply too good of an opportunity to pass up. Shai also has the Assassin ability, which drastically boosts his mid-range shot stat, with an additional boost received when the enemy's basket is low HP. And while mid-range shots are historically an inefficient way of delivering damage, Shai's base stats, along with Assassin, allow the mid-range shot to become a viable strategy. The strat is so strong that defenders will willingly expose their basket to stop the mid-range, leading to even more efficient damage opportunities for Shai. Unfortunately, Shai seems fairly committed to his current party, but if other point guards make their way to your guild hall, it would be good to keep an eye out for ones that possess even a fraction of the traits of Shai. And that's our tier list. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you think I missed out on anyone in the comments, and be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed.